Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Centers, and today we're talking about the Janome Skyline S5. In this video, I'm going to show you the accessories that come with this machine. First off, we have the cover that goes on the machine. It's great for keeping dust off of your machine while you're not sewing, and I would really recommend keeping your machine covered when you're not using it. It keeps light and dust off of it. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. It just slides off like this, folds up nice and flat. I'll leave that over there. Okay, over here we have the feet and accessories that come with this machine. Now this is your A foot. The A foot comes with your machine. It's on your machine already when you unbox it. The way you put this foot on, and all the feet that have the little bar there, the way that you put this on, let's turn on the machine, there we go, is you put this right underneath so that the bar is right underneath the clamp, lower this down, and it goes right on there. So you lift up your presser lifter to lift it up, and you put it down to put that on there. Okay, next we have the rolled hem foot. That's this one right here. Rolled hem can do, I'll show you my example here, this little example here. So you can see it's a nice finely rolled hem. Now the beauty of using this foot is that you don't have to pre-press the edge of your fabric. You just feed that right into that little curl there, and it makes a beautiful rolled hem. You can also get these in a larger size that make a slightly larger rolled hem. So if you have sort of a beefy quilting cotton, but it's just kind of a little thicker, it's easier to use ones that have a little bit wider. But this is great for fine fabrics. Next we have the zipper foot. Now this zipper foot, you can adjust your needle position so that you can either sew on the left side or on the right side, and you can sew really close to those zipper teeth. Now the hole in the center is not to sew through, it's just sort of a, just in case you forget to move your needle and you press needle down or something like that, it's going to protect your needle from being broken or whatever. But you would move your needle to one side or the other using the controls on your machine. Okay. This is your fancy stitch foot or satin stitch foot. It has a groove on the back here. So if you're doing a satin stitch, which is a real short zigzag that almost looks like satin, you have room for that to flow right through there. Also, some of the decorative stitches and the lettering that you do put a lot of thread into your fabric when you sew those, and you also want those to flow right through there. So that's your F foot. This is your blind hem foot, the G foot. Now blind hem, here's an example of a blind hem. This is on quilting cotton, and it's with contrast threads so you can actually see the little stitches there. But it makes a blind hem stitch, and this is designed to, actually what to do is you put your fabric like that, and it floats right along this bend in the fabric. That's another video, process video that we'll show you later on how to use this. This is your overcasting foot. Now this has, you can see those little wires right in the middle of there. Your overcasting foot is good for overcasting the edges of fabrics to keep them from fraying. You can also, there are stitches on your machine that you can stitch a seam and overcast in like a scant 1/4 inch with using this foot. It's if you choose those stitches, it's calibrated so that the needle will not hit those wires there. If you use just a zigzag stitch, you're going to need to widen your zigzag to the full width just to make sure that what this does, it gives us a little bit of slack in the thread so that it doesn't scrunch up the edges. And I'll show you, oh, I don't have that right now. Okay, that's all right. Okay, this is your 1/4 inch foot. Now this would be what quilters use for piecing. When you put this on, you can either move your needle position over to the right, or you can choose the stitch on your machine that says 1/4 inch P for piecing. as a quilt piecing. And then you run the edge of your fabric right here along this little metal flange, and that will give you a beautiful, even 1/4 inch seam allowance on your quilt pieces. And then when you've got your quilt top all put together, you put your batting, your backing, and the quilt top. And this is what you would use for doing like free motion quilting. This fits on your machine. You would have to take the quick change ankle off. This little wire here goes above the needle clamp bar, and then every time the needle goes up, this jumps up. Every time the needle goes down to make a stitch, this goes down to help form a stitch. And that way you can get that where you're moving your fabric around and making those beautiful designs. Here we have the foot to do buttonholes. Now buttonholes are like this here. Okay, there's a variety of different buttonholes that you can do. And now this guy looks real complicated, but it actually does a lot of the work for you. I'm going to take the stabilizer bar off. The stabilizer bar is for if you have like a coat with a lot of layers in here that you're doing a buttonhole on. It keeps all those layers together, but you can easily take this off of here and just set it aside. So if you're doing like buttonholes on a shirt or a garment, thin garment, you can use just like this. What you would do, and I can show you this later in a process video how to do this, but basically it holds your button right here. You zero that down onto the button and it gives you just the right length of buttonhole. It's really a beautiful tool to use for making buttonholes. This is your walking foot. Now, similar to the free motion quilting foot, this also has a mechanism that sits above the needle clamp bar. So every time the needle lifts up, see how those little feet there, they go down. And what that does is it pushes against the fabric and lifts up the toes of the foot a little bit to keep them from dragging on the fabric. So that's why it's called a walking foot. That's how it works. It's great for sewing on things that are maybe slightly plasticized, like there are some waterproof fabrics that are like that. Also, if you're trying to match stripes on or plaids, it's great for that. And if you've got things that are like a little lofty, like your fleece, you can kind of keep those layers from shifting. That's what the walking foot's for. Then over here we have a guide that fits right back in there like that. You just push that on, and what this is for making parallel lines of stitching. So say you're using this to sew some lines of stitching on your quilt. And this is great for sewing, quilting, the layers, because it keeps all those layers together, keeps them from shifting. But you want to guide this, say, right along the edge of a square on your quilt. You've got an even distance, and you can adjust this to make it further or closer, depending on what you want. And this just pops right out like that. Over here we have another quilting bar, and this one fits on your machine. I'll show you over here. There's a little place right in the back. Push this in. It's a tight fit, which it should be. There it is. And now you can make lines of stitching that are parallel to each other. Say decorative stitching that you want to do, two parallel lines or multiple parallel lines. You would do the first line of stitching, move that over, put that right underneath there, and follow that as you're sewing your second line and your third line, etc. So this comes right back out of there like that. Here we have the button sewing foot. Now this is for sewing buttons on, the kind of buttons that have the holes, either 4 holes or 2 holes that go through the button. Not for the shank kind of button, that kind you would have to sew on by hand. This one fits on your machine, and then the little toes hold the button in place. In that case, you'd want to drop the feed dogs and use a zigzag stitch. Over here we have the bobbins that come with your machine. There should be 5 of them. You may only see 4 of them in your accessory bag. That's because one of them is already in your machine. These are class 15 plastic bobbins. You want to use these kind of bobbins if you decide to get more bobbins. Don't use ones that are shorter, rounder, or different anyway. You want class 15 bobbins. They're made to work in your machine. Here we have the screwdriver, and of course the screwdriver is for taking out your needle or taking the ankle off so that you can use your free motion foot, whatever. And then we have the cleaning brush. Now in our maintenance video, we'll talk about using the brush to clean the machine, but basically it's just to get lint and things out of your machine. And then here is every sewer's friend, the seam ripper. And the seam ripper is meant to take out stitches, but also if you're doing buttonholes, you're going to want to cut the buttonhole after you have sewn it. This is the tool that you would use. Now the cover fits right back here on the handle, and that's good because when you lay this down, you don't want it rolling away. Those little lugs there will keep it from rolling away. And then once you're done using it, put the cover back on. Here in the center we have the stylus. Now this is for the touch screen. So over here, I'll show you. On the touch screen, you can touch different things and get different stitches by touching this. The touch screen is meant to have you use the stylus, not your finger on it. So I'm going to just go back to regular stitching there. And then I already showed you the stabilizer plate for the buttonhole foot. This is your straight stitch plate. Now the straight stitch plate is wonderful for sewing fine fabrics or knits that tend to get pushed down into the 9mm wide zigzag plate. And so I've used this when I was sewing a wedding dress for my daughter. I used this kind of plate here for sewing. It was beautiful. It worked really well. It has the same markings on the side, same bobbin cover as the regular plate. Also, nice thing about this plate is it has this little doohickey right here, which tells the machine which plate you have. So if you have this straight stitch plate, you couldn't do a zigzag. Well, the machine's not going to let you do a zigzag because it's reading what kind of foot you have. So that's a safety feature. Really nice one. Okay, and then we have these spool caps. Now, if you have a wide spool, you'd want to have this one on. The reason why we have a spool cap is because this has a horizontal spool pin, and you don't want your spool sliding off. So this is going to help keep it on there. So for your wide spools, use this. For your narrower spools, use the narrower one. And then some spools are just like thread on a tube. There's no end cap, in which case you would use this little guy here. And this slides into the tube that the thread is wound around, and that keeps the spool on the spool cap. Here we have a twin needle spool cap, so if you're using 2 threads, you'll notice in your needle set a twin needle comes with your machine. That means you can use 2 spools of thread on the top. That goes over here. Open the lid, goes right up here like that. And then got 2 spools, thread it the same way. Another process video, but you can use it for 2 spools of thread. Okay. Now, I also want to talk about a couple other accessories that I have found that are useful for this machine. So for instance, when I'm doing blind hem, I'll show you over here. I've decided I really like this one a little bit better than your regular blind hem foot. And that's because this has an adjustable flange. Now this is good not only for blind hem, but for edge stitching, for making pin tucks or top stitching around collars and cuffs. This is also really nice for sewing. Well, you can sew right next to whatever the distance you're trying to get. Anyway, the beautiful foot for very versatile. Also, I like to have a larger screwdriver. The nice thing about this screwdriver is that you can really get a hold of it. It's a little bit easier to kind of get that grip on it for our older kind of arthritic hands. Makes it easier to get a grip. And then we have the cleaning brush, but I like this cleaning brush here. This actually comes with some of our sergers, but this has a needle inserter hole. So when you are replacing your needle, you can actually put the needle right in there and use this as a handle to hold your needle instead of just using your fingers. It's a little bit more convenient that way. Of course, it also works as a brush too. So that is the basic accessories that we have with our machine. And of course, you have the foot control and the manual and things like that. But enjoy sewing, and these accessories will help you enjoy sewing and do a beautiful job. There's always other accessories that you can get. Make sure that you get the ones that are for 9mm wide, because that will fit the foot here. That's important. If you're not sure what kind of machine, what kind of accessory to get with your machine, tell the people up at the counter here what kind of machine you have, and they will guide you to the correct accessory. We have lots of other videos on the Skyline S5 and other machines. If you've enjoyed this video and it's been helpful, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave them in the area down below. So have fun sewing. We'll see you later. Bye.